Hey everybody, and welcome back to Dude's Brunch. It's a podcast about popular culture, internet garbage, and black coffee. I'm your host, Taylor Olstead, and with me, it's Tyler Reed. Tyler, what did you have for brunch today?
Hey everybody. Today for brunch, had an extra special treat. Went to a gluten-free, nut-free bakery with Catherine in Findlay Market. And we spent over $20 in pastries.
Damn, son.
How many pastries did you get?
Catherine we got 4 donuts and 2 muffins.
Okay, that's not bad then.
Yeah, see, there you go. Shaun was like, like $15 each.
You gotta have dozens, so that's alright, I guess.
So, how many of these have you eaten so far?
Okay, so I had a lavender muffin. It was sweet. It was
oh, that sounds good.
Lemony, and it had a little bit of like saltiness on top. So you kind of sometimes you got a little bit of salt, which was surprisingly nice. And then I had like a cinnamon chocolate donut, and that was also great. Catherine couldn't eat all of hers, but she put too many things on her plate, so she ate some of the things, but gave me the rest. And so I had a blueberry muffin, which had more blueberries than you've ever seen in anything in your life. And then there was just a regular straight up like cinnamon sugar donut. It's pretty good. It was a nice minimal place. You know, I had also coffee available.
And Shaun Evans is here. Shaun, what did you have for brunch today?
I had French bread and brie.
Wow, classing it up.
And coffee.
Also kind of a lunch. More than a brunch, but I'll accept that.
As you know, I have no problem with that.
So was this just a standard brie, or was there anything special about it?
It said reserve on the package, but I don't know what that means.
But it wasn't like smoked or anything. Like it was just...
No, it was just brie.
Someone had reservations about serving that brie, and so they...
I know, I was like, well, who is it reserved for? It's like, oh, it's reserved brie. Like, oh, okay, like, table for 2, please. Under Dr. Shaun.
Table for brie.
I'm sorry, sir, but we only take reservations in even numbers.
Well, I'm your host, Taylor, and for brunch this morning, I had some scrambled eggs and bacon and coffee. Not that remarkable.
What brand of coffee?
So right now, I'm on this Seattle's Best coffee, because it's been on sale a lot recently.
Oh, God.
It's just fine.
Oh, God.
I know Tyler is so deeply disapproving of my grocery store ground coffee. But here's the deal, man. Like, I'm just trying to take complications out of my life. The last thing I need is more complications in my morning.
You know what, Taylor? If you wake up every morning and you make that coffee and you take a sip of it and you enjoy it, or at least find it palatable, edible, drinkable, you know what? That's an okay day. But If as long as you don't hate it, as long as you aren't having deep-seated hatred for this coffee and you secretly are just trying to cover it up with creamers and sugars.
Well, okay, so here's my thing, right? Every once in a while, I will think to myself, I should try some flavored coffee. And that's where I go wrong. Because last week I did have a bag of hazelnut coffee, and no. The hazelnut needs to come from like a syrup or a creamer. It doesn't need to be roasted into the coffee. It was too much. It was overpowering. One of the days it actually made me a little bit sick to my stomach. It was so hazelnutty. I was just like, no, done. Not having it.
There you go. Learned your lesson.
I did learn my lesson. Also been falling off my smoothie game lately. I feel like I need to get back on the smoothie train.
My new roommate smoothies every day. So I
was making smoothies every day. So
I think I need to get on that train as well. Just have 2 blenders going all the time.
You need a blender to blend, and then a blender to blend your blending blend.
For all that peanut butter.
Okay, but here's the secret, though. It costs a little bit more, but you got to get that powdered peanut butter. It blends easier, and it's easier to clean.
At work, we just use straight up Jif from a can. Crunchy Jif. And you're like, why though? Why would... It's the messiest possible combination of things.
There are a lot of bad choices there. A lot of bad choices.
Sorry. Can we do a short segment of Shaun and Taylor's Craft Beer Corner?
I would love to.
Shaun and Taylor's Craft Beer Corner. What are we drinking today?
Wow. Now we have a jingle. After all of these years, we finally have a jingle for the Craft Beer Corner. Shaun, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Great Lakes Holy Moses Raspberry White Ale.
Ooh, I've never heard of that one.
Pick it up at your local Giant Foods or any other grocery provider that might be near you. It better be Giant Foods.
So, describe this beer to me because it sounds very unique and strange.
It is described as an ale with spices and raspberries, and I would call it more of a Belgian-style beer with a raspberry taste to it. It is spicy, but it's like not really spicy.
That's fair. So I don't have anything too remarkable. I'm drinking the New Belgium Voodoo Ranger IPA. Voodoo Ranger, not my favorite IPA. But yesterday, as Shaun and Tyler know, I ran my first half marathon, and
woo!
Thank you to Shaun for writing my training plan. And I came home and was in a world of pain. My feet were covered in very painful blisters, and so I started watching the Venture Brothers and drinking beer, and I was about out of beer, and I texted my roommate and said, go to the store on your way home from work and buy me whatever IPA is cheapest, I don't care. And he came home with a 6-pack of Voodoo Ranger because he's a good roommate.
What are you drinking right now, Tyler? Fucking here we go.
I'm drinking Skippy Natural Peanut Butter Spread with Honey. Creamy.
That's what you...
The last time we did Craft Beer Corner, you were eating it off... Yep, eating
bananas.
Peanut butter off of bananas at his desk. Just like last time.
I love you. You're classic. Never change.
I do, though. I want to talk about running for a minute. And I realize that we're excluding Tyler from this, but I want to bring Tyler into it a little bit. Because, so, a coworker and I ran this half together, and we're both really into music. We go to concerts together sometimes. And we're very picky about our running playlists. We were, talking before the race about what songs we were going to start with and all this stuff. Because, you want to kind of build the intensity right. And so I was trying to be really selective about like what songs were on the playlist and what I listened to when or whatever, right? And I started off with this track. I want to make sure I get the artist right because it's one of these that I just like found out of the blue. Yeah, I started off with this song Good Morning by Max Frost, which is kind of a poppy, like alt-pop type of situation with a pseudo rap break and a gospel choir in it. Like, it's very cheesy, but it's got a really like pounding beat to it. But then more importantly, in that last half mile before the finish line, that's when you really need your best jam. And I went with You're Not Pretty But You Got It Going On by Band of Skulls, because the guitar riff in that song is so choice. And I was just curious for Shaun and Tyler, what are your like beginning of workout or strenuous thing, end of workout or strenuous thing songs? Like, if you had to pick two right now, rapid fire.
Probably People That We Love by Bush.
Good point. Good pick.
And New Low by Middle Class Rut.
New Low is like my middle of the run song. Good choice, though. Tyler?
Well, as we know, I've never done anything extraneous before in my life. So I had to just imagine what it'd be like to work hard.
You did pick a good choice. Judas Priest is always a good choice.
Well, this is the new album. Their newest album is surprisingly goes pretty hard. So I would say that. I mean, I would probably it sounds a little silly, but I've kind of gone back to like A Day to Remember a little bit. So probably something from like that era where it's lots of chugging and whiny boys.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I was going to say my one that would round out my top three would probably be X-Ray Vision by Clutch.
My like chuggy rock song is Anthem Part 2 by Blink-182. Similar concept, just a little more melodic.
It's a real shame about Tom DeLonge and him loving aliens more than the human race.
He's defending aliens more than he's defending pop punk.
Hey, listen, as you get older, you'll find out your priorities change.
A weird strange-looking human loves a very strange and sexy alien.
Oh, and a weird, strange-looking human loves a very strange-looking man. That's my Toby Keith rendition of what you just said.
I love it. I love our new podcast. It's already off to a wild success.
This week on What You Say.
What would you say?
It's all for the best. Don't worry about it.
All right, so keeping with our series here, last week we talked to Tyler and interviewed him about his progression over the last 3 years that we've been producing this podcast. This week, the tables have turned, and we'll be talking about Shaun.
Tables have turned.
So,
oh god.
Unbeknownst to Shaun, Tyler and I had a little bit of a pre-conference before this call, and started to look over our shared lists of questions and think about this. And it seemed like we both had the same first question out of the gate for Shaun. And so I just wanted to ask, over the last 3 years, you've done all sorts of things, like you've created visual art, you've done music, you've written a lot, you've made audio art, you've done all sorts of stuff. Like
run for president,
created a bracket of presidential candidates. Like where does this inspiration come from? Like what drives you to do all these disparate things?
Probably this podcast. And as my life has continued to be more busy, I've kind of changed that. But honestly, it's whatever kind of sparks my interest at the moment. So, and for people who don't know, I do have a traditional academic political science background. So that's how I ended up doing all these brackets. And for a sweet 24 hours, my bracket for presidential elections for 2016 was right.
For only 24 hours, though. And then it was wrong in the worst possible way.
Only 24 hours, but it was great. Oh yeah, no, it did. But it was right for a second. And I was like, I'm going to win. I'm going to win out of all these things. I'm going to take it. And I didn't, but
can we just take a step back to a simpler time when it was a game?
When the future of the free world was basically an NCAA tournament in Shaun's mind. Yeah, those were good days.
Back when we were literally decomposing our government as we speak.
But that's so I enjoy doing stuff like that. I like politics is always a big thing for me. And then basically a lot of the other stuff that I do mainly just has to do with if Taylor asks me to do something really nice, like edit the show, or if he wants a new theme song for something, I can sit down with a guitar and rip something out. I'm actually really looking forward to doing that now that we've announced that we're going to be starting a new podcast. I've been working on some cool riffs, kind of bulking up on my my music game, so we can have some super cool intros and outros for that. In preparation for that process, so I'm excited.
So then, my theory is, Taylor and I have both gone to school, had formal education and training in some sort of visual art in some form or another. Would you say that your lack of formal training has sort of influenced you to kind of just travel amongst whatever kind of art tickles your fancy?
Yes, and I do it in a very naive way, and I do it in a very naive way, and I do it to the best that I can. But it makes me respect you guys even more because it takes you I kind of have I can put my foot in the water a little bit and be like, oh, this was fun. The pressure's too much for me, so I'm gonna not do this anymore. But
if given the opportunity, would you go to school for art? Instead of either going back again, or would you take back your current education and then retrain yourself?
No. Well, okay, so there were two different questions there. The first one is, I have a story. The second one is, no. So I'm very happy with what I did. I'm proud of my education. I'm glad that I went to the two top political science schools in the state. The other one that I didn't go to is the PhD at OSU, is the top-rated PhD program in Ohio for political science. which is fine. Proud of them. They're the only one, I think they're one of the only ones that actually has a PhD program in that particular field in the state, so it's not a big deal. But that's not to discredit them. Like, if you're the only game in town, it's a good game. When I was originally applying to graduate school, I did apply to go down the track of art history.
I didn't know that. What changed your mind?
It was a backup. It wasn't my original plan. I liked art history. I took art history my junior year of undergraduate first semester, and I really, really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed writing about it, and actually in graduate school itself, I wrote a lot about politics and art history. So I found a way to kind of mesh that in there. But no, I'm really happy with what I did, so I wouldn't really change that.
That's kind of funny because when I went to vocational school, they were like, "What's your first choice or what's your second choice?" I'm like, what do you mean? What's my second choice? like, I'm just not going to do this if you're not going to give me what I want.
Right.
But I mean, okay, so on topic. So I think that's really, I think it's always interesting to experience or to be around other people that like to make art but have no like formal training, because I feel like they almost approach it in such a more freeing kind of way, like in a more, like almost a more healthy way, because like for me, I've been like tirelessly like this is what I'm working towards, this is what I'm working towards, this is what I'm trying to do, and sometimes it's like I could just do something else. Like it's almost to a fault at sometimes where I almost have defaulted to, if it's not this, then I have to go with like customer service. So, you know, I don't know. I just think that it's because you've always kind of been drawing. Because like I remember there's distinct moments of staying over at your house, watching Food Network or Discovery Channel, and you're just like graffitiing.
Yeah, like in a sketchbook or on like whatever you could get your hands on.
Yeah.
Like at that time, you were probably more creative than I was, because I was like barely like drawing that much or really doing anything. You were just naturally excited for this, and I was like, I draw pretty pictures on the computer, so it was.
That's actually something. Oh, go ahead, Shaun.
No, go for it.
That's actually a place where I wanted to take this. I was trying to go all Nardwuar on you and find some early examples of your drawing and painting from high school. And I don't have any digital copies of any of it anymore because it was all on my MySpace that got deleted. Shouts out to MySpace, I guess.
Rip.
But that's honestly one of my earliest impressions of you, was that you were always drawing. And like we would hang out at somebody's house and you would like always have a backpack with you, and in the backpack would be drumsticks and a sketchbook and a bunch of Sharpies. Like more Sharpies than I'd ever seen. It just seemed like you were constantly drawing, and I was always curious, like, was that like a meditative thing? Like you just need to keep your hands busy, or like what motivated you to just like be constantly doing that, some kind of creative something?
Yeah, it was a meditative thing. It was something nice. I had a lot of free time on my hands, so I would just use that as a creative outlet to kind of, well, really meditate, like be there with myself and think about things and get better at it. And that was at a really transitional point. Like when Taylor, when you and I started hanging out, that was like right at the end of senior year for me, so I was like getting ready to transition into a new stage of my life. And I drew and painted a lot in college, in undergraduate in particular, not so much in graduate school.
So I wanted to kind of go into that space for a minute, because it seems like, having known you for as long as I have now, you go through these periods of really intense creative energy when you're in times of change or times of emotional distress, not to take it to that dark place. You also do really erratic and stupid things during those periods. One of my favorites is a text message I got from you one time that said, "I got so mad, I punched my MacBook and it broke. And then I got mad, so I got my septum pierced."
That sounds right.
But, I mean, it was always like, you were never the kind of person that would, like, get destructive or violent or anything when you were angry. You would just, like, go away and, like, make some art. And one of the best examples of that, and we don't need to go into, like, the intense particulars of this period of your life, but you went away to college, and then you came back the next summer, and I don't remember if you burned me a CD or gave me a flash drive or something.
Oh, yes. No, I know exactly what you're going to talk about.
But you gave me this like 8-song acoustic EP that you had recorded on your MacBook in GarageBand during your freshman year at University of Akron.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to revisit the first song on that, and just kind of...
What was that song called?
It was called Going Home, is what I have it as.
I haven't listened to this in a long time.
Things aren't really coming clear. I just gotta find some way out of here. My vision's getting blurry and there's nothing clear. I got the feeling that the end is almost here. I can't be the one to make things happen again. I can't be the one to make things happen again.
I guess I should talk about this. Because I've really been thinking about this lately in the past couple years. There was when I first went to college, I basically spent a ton of time by myself. I was in a new place. I had stopped playing drums on a regular basis and started playing guitar. And my life basically went just like this. I got up and I went to class, and then I went to the percussion studio and studied for that because I was taking percussion lessons. But it was like xylophone and snare drum. It wasn't like drum set. And then I would go home and do some work, and then I would go to the gym, and then I would come home at about 9 o'clock at night, and from about 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock in the morning, I would basically sit in front of my computer with my guitar and learn how to play songs or record songs. And this was like every night.
Aww.
For basically like that entire year. Basically every night I would do that.
How do you...
And this is kind of what came out of it. No. You know what this was about? This was about a relationship that I was in that was really breaking apart at the time. And there was a bunch of relationships that were kind of falling apart at this time. And I'm actually listening back to it. I'm kind of impressed that it sounds as good as it does because it was recorded through the microphone on the front of my computer.
Oh, Apple. You do some of the things right some of the time. But recently done the things none of the time.
That's really, like, I hang on to this song and I actually listen to it maybe every couple of months because it does sound really good for being recorded on a MacBook. It has this lo-fi kind of echoiness to it that I'm sure was a filter you put on it in GarageBand. But it works. Like, it has this very, like, forlorn lo-fi feeling to it that I have always really enjoyed.
Well, as we know, lo-fi's sexy again, so let's just get ready for everything to sound like it's made with a potato.
I mean, I can honestly say that about this particular song in hindsight of listening to it, because I can like put myself back in this place when I wrote it. Was like, okay, so I was staying up at night, and at night when I was like wasn't recording, I was out roaming the streets. And that sounds a lot worse than it is but it's not, because in Akron, basically, it's like a commuter town, so people that come down, they work at the banks and the government buildings and whatever, and then they all go home. So, like, after 8 o'clock at night, it's empty. On the weekends, it's empty. Like, there's no one driving around. There's, like, no cars anywhere. There's just, like, students that live and people that go to the library and homeless. That's it. There's nobody. And so I would just walk around and explore and see what was going on and come up with ideas, and I was listening to like Cage the Elephant and Jack White, and I was really super into the White Stripes at this point in time too, so I was trying to make these like simple songs, and a lot of the songs that I wrote were basically just mix up of different chord progressions that I had learned from songs at the time. So I think that a lot of this album is actually written off of Morning Glory. What's the Story of Morning Glory? Basically all these songs are just repurposed
Oasis songs?
Oasis songs or Goo Goo Dolls songs. With like a more simple strum pattern. But the thing is that this actually really helped me, because when we started recording podcasts, I really understood what it meant to like go in and double track something, or how to get like, I've always really been in love with reverb. I still to this day love reverb on stuff, because I want my music to be atmospheric. And I think even when you have headphones on, that it should take you to a place. and it doesn't have to be flat. It doesn't have to be just like going into your face. That it should really, music should be a nice escape. But yeah, no, thank you for this. This is actually kind of fun. I have a ton of music that I haven't given out to anybody either, so this is funny. Because I don't know if you guys have the album that Greg and I made together.
It's funny you mentioned it because that was the next thing I wanted to talk about. Shaun's high school best friend Greg, who was a good friend of ours as well, had a little two-piece band with Shaun that they called the Bare-Chested Men's Club.
That is what it was called.
And one track off of the collection that I have from Bare-Chested Men's Club, which I'm sure isn't all of it, when you talk about being really atmospheric, I was actually listening to this at the laundromat today while I was folding clothes. I always liked this jam. It's called, the file I have is called Jungle.
Oh, yes. Okay, good. This is one of the first songs that we ever wrote together. Okay, so basically how this song started was Greg and I, before we left for college, we did kind of like fiddle around a little bit, but the summer that we came home from freshman year, we probably hung out like every day that we weren't after work or in between, and we basically he came over to my house or I went over to his house and we just made music. We just like, he would play a little riff or I would play something. And then we just kind of like riff off each other and make a little song, make a little ditty, see what's going on. And Jungle was the first riff that Greg really, really liked, that he really wanted to make into something. So we recorded it and we tried to make up lyrics for it a lot, but nothing ever really came. So we just left it as this like guitar and bass. But it was like beta version of what we wanted to sound like later on. And I also recorded this on the speaker of my computer in one take with a bunch of blankets over the top. I basically just hit play, threw about 5 blankets over the top, and then walked to the other side of the room and sat behind my drums and edited it. So it was shorter in the front than the other. But yeah, no, when I listen to this, because I do listen to this on a regular basis, I can hear the mistakes, which is why I don't listen to my own music sometimes. But I love it. But yeah, it was basically just like...
So was this recorded in the basement of your parents' old house?
This is recorded in Greg's basement.
Okay. I was going to say, because it has a very basement echo to it.
I think I put reverb on it.
And I know your parents' basement was carpeted, so...
Yeah.
I like that Taylor has all these, because I didn't even know they existed for the most part. So, or they've been lost through the like 5 different devices I've probably had since that time. So
I can tell you from listening to this now that a lot of this was influenced based off of the works of Wolfmother and Led Zeppelin.
Black Rebel Motorcycle Club.
And that too, but mostly those two. Had
you even heard Explosions in the Sky by this point?
No.
Because there are some Explosions in the Sky moments in here too.
Because I remember Greg was we were both having girl troubles at the time, so we just kept saying, oh, it's a jungle out there, blah, 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 like you gotta be an animal to, meet women and all this stuff, which we don't believe now. It was just stupid, like, just dumb, cliche talk. But this was our warm-up song when we wanted to get ready to, like, write. We would play this song about 5 or 6 times just to get in the headspace of writing. And I remember I tried to just add in as much stupid crap as I could. But this is not actually my favorite song that we ever made together. My favorite song ever that we ever oh God, I want him to be here for this.
Which one is your favorite?
It's Wholesome Folsom. That's my favorite song that we ever made. We should talk about that. Folsom was a song that so the drum beat you hear in the beginning was what I started with. I was playing this when we were just like messing around, and I really liked this, so that like bam bam da 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 bam bam da 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 da, and I was just trying to like get backbeats as many as I could as fast as I could. And so we were writing this in Greg's basement, and he was just writing this little White Stripes ditty to kind of make it sound deeper. And we basically did this writing style where I was like, okay, so we're gonna write 2 verses, and we're like Seven Nation Army, and we're not gonna have any chorus. We're just gonna be us playing. So I wrote the first chorus, or the first verse, and I just pushed it out like real quick, just waiting, just blah 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 blah. Just wrote it down, and I was like, this is it. I'm just gonna stick with it. This is what we're gonna do. So we played this. We probably played it 10 more times. Greg came up to the microphone and started singing stuff, and I was like, just write it down. Just write down whatever comes to mind. Stream of conscious. Don't worry about it. We'll sing it, whatever comes out. So the second verse is what Greg wrote, and it was just absolutely awesome what he wrote down, because it's probably my favorite verse that I've ever sang ever. And the lyrics are just me singing behind an unphantom microphone through like a bass amp, just screaming is how we got the volume. There's like nothing. That's why it sounds so overdone.
It sounds like Jack White singing through a megaphone.
That's what it
doesn't even sound like Shaun, which is the most exciting part. That it's like,
and I always had so much fun when we were playing this, because really what I had to do was cover up the mic with my hand like this, like put it over my hand, and then I had to play the beats with my right hand and sing. So I'm like kicking the bass drum and the hi-hat and playing with my right hand to try and get all the other beats in, and then sing. And then as soon as we went into the chorus, I would cover up the microphone and throw it away so it wouldn't pick up anything else from the drums, and I'd start like ripping at it again and pull it back over. So this is my favorite song. As you can tell how excited I am about it. Like, this is the best thing that I've ever made.
I mean, aside from like the cymbals being like pretty like tinny, I guess is how they sound. I guess I don't know. Like, I don't know anything about audio engineering. I mean, it still sounds pretty good. Like, there's songs that I've probably consumed in my life that have sounded worse than this, that have been like officially released. So.
And so that anecdote about the mic kind of brings up a question that I wanted to ask you. Around this period, the documentary It Might Get Loud came out, which I feel like is necessary viewing if you listen to this podcast. If you haven't seen it, it's about Jimmy Page, The Edge, and Jack White. And in it, Jack White talks at length about how he tries to make everything as difficult as possible. He wants to put his picks at the back of the stage, so if he drops one, he has to go and get another one. And he talks about, like, art has to be a struggle. And I remember during this period, and even much later, you really identified with that mindset, and you would talk about, like, life is the struggle and art is the struggle, and it's like how you work yourself through the struggle. I'm curious, do you still hold that? Like, can you talk about that belief set and like how you got there and if that's still there for you?
I mean, I was really influenced by that particular film, and at the time, I was like that, because essentially when I hear this album again, it really encapsulates that time, because he was flying through this Gretsch Corvette, this awesome red with like 3 humbuckers, and it always went out of tune. I always struggled to keep this stupid guitar in tune, and I was playing between 2 drum sets. This one that he had at his house and the one that I had at my house. So at any one time, it was different sounds going on, and we were dragging his big like AC30 amp, which is huge and probably weighs like 75 pounds. We're like dragging it around house to house and between his cars. It's like making his suspension floor out, and his old Volkswagen, and I had just started like stripping my gear. I had just started, like when I was in drumline, I was like, I want to have this progressive rock drum set with all these stupid cymbals. Like essentially you're hiding out from the audience, which is great because they're trying to throw bottles at you and stuff, which never ever had happened to me because I played out maybe one time ever. And I was like, you know what?
But you were listening to a lot of progressive metal at the time, to be fair.
Yeah, right. And so I just started stripping it out. Like I just started pulling everything apart. Like if I could just have, because when I went to his house, I had my optimal setup, which was a crash ride and a hi-hat. I didn't, like I had another crash cymbal, but I barely ever used it. I did kind of put it out of the way. So if I wanted to use it, it was like I had to hesitate. Like, am I going to be able to get there in time to actually get it? But yeah, no, that definitely is what was going on. But now today, hell no. No.
How did that change? Like, how did you get out of that?
Different projects. I think that at the time that was what I wanted to do, and that was the way that it is. But now I am. It looks much different. Like I can kind of scoot out of the way, and you can kind of see like I have my stool and I have my guitars, and behind my stool is my pedals, and they're all together. And I sit in front of it and I just go to town. I can like tweak little things. Like I'm in this really experimental mood right now. So I am trying to amass these pedals that are really kind of crazy and give a lot of feedback and oscillate unknowingly. So I need to be right in front of them all the time. I can't actually put them at my feet because they're a little bit out of my control most of the time. But that said, that's what I'm into right now.
I mean, I feel like in some way, after you've felt like what it is to do it the wrong way, to do it as a hard way as possible, I feel like at some point you're like, all right, you know, I've gotten my kicks, you know, like this is, I got the hard experience out of the way.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to just do what's going to make what I want to do, what's going to sound good, what's going to, you know, like what's going to be convenient. Because, I mean, isn't it true, like high school, you're like, you really just have seemingly infinite time. So you're like, yeah, you go to school, you can't have a job, and so basically you just fuck around and you figure out what works.
Yeah.
So that's what you did.
Right. And I think too that at the time I was getting a little bit bored with drums. I'm not bored with guitar. Guitar is 10 times more complicated for me to do. It requires you to actually know music and theory. It's much more nuanced than drums. I've always kind of had this little problem with drums where I guess I should talk to Seth about this. He would actually really know about this. I think that drums by themselves sound awful, like terrible. I've never heard a drum solo in my entire life that I thought that sounds good. Ever.
Right. Like you could say there's good Dave Grohl songs, but I can guarantee they're not gonna be the ones where he's drumming.
I would argue with that, but
okay,
that's a digression.
But that's drum solos though. I always thought like I want it to be a little bit more melodic, and drums don't provide that for me. But drums do provide the rhythm, and you need a good rhythm. And I was telling Sarah the other day, when I play guitar, I play it like a drummer. Mm-hmm. I'm much more interested in playing and getting like different percussive sounds out of guitars than I am really like having this beautifully strung chord with a seventh in there. You know what I mean? Like that's not who I am. I'm very much about getting the looper pedal and sitting down and putting in like a whole track in one sitting and having it be textured and reverbed and delayed and all kinds of crazy stuff. I still make music like that, like a drummer, because that's how I was taught to play, where it's like, you don't just hit a cymbal. You hit a cymbal and you hit a bass drum behind it to fill that sound out. Or like, what are you doing to make sure that your snare drum hit sounds full? So I think about that when I write guitar music now, because I'm like, okay, well, I could just pluck a note and it would sound like a note, but what do I do to take that note to fill a whole room? Because in my mind, I still love the idea of a two-piece band like the White Stripes, where how do we make two people, one person, three people sound like they're filling Wembley Stadium? You know, like I don't want to not have to, I don't care if you have to use effects pedals or anything, but what does it take for that one or two people to make that huge sound, as big as we can make it sound? That's what I want to do. That's my goal. Sonic depth.
You made music throughout high school and undergrad, and by the time you came down to Athens to OU, and you were working on your graduate degree, and I was hanging out in your apartment a lot, you weren't doing as much music, obviously, because grad school is very time intensive, but you were writing a lot and you were doing more visual art. You created the awesome Ace character, which there's one of behind you. There's one in my living room. I think Tyler has an Ace somewhere. We'll put a link in the show notes to Ace. But I was curious, like, what was it like during that transition? Like, you obviously found other outlets. That was around the time that we started this show. Like, do you feel like your creativity kind of fills in the gaps around the rest of your life, or like how do you decide what to work on in any given period?
See, that's one of the conundrums that I've really had lately. Now that I'm starting to be more adult-esque, I've actually wanted to stop doing a bunch of things, like doing the Renaissance Man thing, and start really homing in on a couple activities that I really want to do. I think I feel like it's from The Office, where Dwight Schrute says, like, why would you half-ass 5 things when you can whole-ass 2 things, or something like that. And it's kind of like a little joke there. But really, honestly, I've been trying to like whole-ass things lately. So one of the things that I try and whole-ass is guitar. And like really get into it and figure it out. I really haven't been drawing that much anymore. I really haven't painted or anything. It's really, I do step back into those times. I feel like it's when I am underemployed. Like I took up nature sketching again for probably about a year, which I really liked. And I was doing watercolor with that, which is really, it was nice. But then, it was really, that's what it was for. It was to occupy time, to get myself into a nice meditative place. But now I'm back to music and I'm really heavy into that.
We talked with Tyler last week about work that he's done around Dudes Brunch. And, one of the ambitions for Dudes Brunch all along was that it would give all of us an outlet for the creative work that doesn't necessarily pay our bills, but that we like to do. And from the very beginning, you wanted to do all of the music. And to date, you've done music for all of the Dudes Brunch shows, I think. You've done stuff for this show. You've done stuff for 10 Minute Tech Talk. I guess we didn't have a theme for Shaun Doesn't Play.
No.
But I remember when we first started talking about this show, you came in really early with 2 different versions of a theme song, and we ended up using one of them very early, and I wanted to bring that one back because I haven't listened to it in a long time either.
Can you put it on?
Yeah.
I forget.
This track was Ubu 2.
We
We used this as our theme song for maybe like the first 2 seasons of Dudes Brunch. Old school listeners will know this one.
This is my sweet, like, Rolling Stones, bacon and eggs kind of get up and drive. And I was doing this through GarageBand with a 3.5 millimeter jack straight out of a Hundo Sam's Club guitar, just banging them out. Making some classic jams.
It really feels like the early days of the podcast where we were like barely scrapping together a show. It takes me back there.
I think I did record this on drums though.
With live drums?
Yeah, because I remember I just put like a 4 on the floor kind of beat behind it, and I was like, this will work for now.
So I was always curious though. You wrote 2 minutes of music for this.
Listen, man, the songwriting process for me goes like this. I get on GarageBand. It's more like it's a recording of thought. I get on GarageBand. I set a 12-bar count. I put drums in the 12-bar count, and then I just start going. I just start playing like 12 or 15 takes, and then I'll go through and listen to the ones that I like. Okay, next. Okay, then I'll start the next. I'll do a next. I'll double track it. I'll do a next track and do like a little solo or something and see what I like. Then I'll go and do another one, and then I'll just kind of go through them all and say like, oh, I like that one. Oh, this is a good transition. Oh, this is a good bridge. And then I'll just kind of make them into that. And that's what this was originally. I didn't record it for this show, but it was right about the time that we started. I knew that we were going to be looking for something. So I was like, oh, this is a good one. I think this will work nicely.
So the next piece that I think you came with is what we still use to this day as our interstitial music. So this is like pre-ad music, or like if I need to edit in a break between two sections of the podcast. This is a piece called Sketches.
Sketches.
What can you tell us about this one?
I forget what I did here. So basically what I did was I think I used like just a drum loop off of iTunes, and then I used a synth off of iTunes with a keyboard, and I was just messing around, and I had to record it the same way where I did like 12 bars of something and then 12 bars of another thing, and then I kind of edited it all together. So it came up with this like really, oh god, it's 5 minutes long. I'm so sorry. But I recorded it in sections because what I intended for you to do was when you edit it, which you did it the right way, is the first one will be 30 seconds, the next one will be 30 seconds, the next one will be 30 seconds. So it all runs together and it's all in the same key and everything. But essentially what you're able to do is have a cohesive story that moves all the way through the podcast, because this was written for when we were doing that like 15 minutes, introduction, outro, blah, blah, blah. So we had good cuts between all of that stuff.
Yeah, and so in my template, I had literally taken different sections from different parts of Sketches and put them in between of all the segments.
Right.
And I feel like this was an interesting piece because not only was there no or barely any live guitar in it, which had always been your thing, but you would really like put the thought into like how it was going to be used. And I feel like this was around the time that the show was starting to get into more of what became like a format in a show, and like we had a formula for how things were going to work. And I'm curious, like, do you like working more in that way? Because your past work was so like freeform.
Mm-hmm. No, this was fun to me because I knew what I was trying to go after, and it worked out really well with the way that I would record kind of now. I mean, it's been probably 3 or 4 months since I've recorded anything, but yeah, no, it works out because I remember playing all these little tracks and saying like, oh, what would be cool here? And now that I'm about halfway through the song, there's just that kind of edgy, like U2 War kind of feeling to it, where it's like a distant and it's focused just on the right, it's panned over to the right ear. Yeah, it was fun. But I try to make music to listen to things that sounds like things that I like to listen for. So if I listen to music, I want to see if you can hear something in the right ear, not in the left ear. I want to control the flanger so that it actually is in a certain rhythm or time within the tempo of how the song actually moves, or that the drive fits the particular kind of distortion that the rest of the guitars have. That's what I'm looking for.
That makes sense. So then, as the last kind of piece in the suite of this show, we have what is, to this day, the Dudes Brunch theme song, 1130. 11:30 plays at the beginning and end of every episode, but our listeners have really only ever heard like the first 10 seconds of it. Talk to us about this one, because I feel like this is like the one, you know? I mean, it's the theme song.
Yeah. Well, I'm super inspired by the Police. When I was playing drums, my drum teacher was really into Stuart Copeland. So I always kind of like the like Afro pop, Jamaican kind of vibe. So when I look for drum tracks, I really like that. Now, this was recorded just on that one dinky electric guitar with the 3.5 millimeter jack popping in the back through GarageBand. But at this time, I really was inspired by Sage Francis, and how he uses like found audio clips. And this has really, we'll get to it soon, but the whole idea of trip hop and found beats is something that I really, really like to do if I'm not feeling inspired in terms of writing music through an actual instrument. I want to add lyrics that aren't my voice in there that say something a little bit more. And I really like the mid-century PSAs because that's so my political science MO.
Yeah, it's that political tie-in.
Right. So, like, I'm learning about IR, and we're talking about the Cold War and stuff like that. Sorry, international relations, and we're talking about the Cold War and stuff. And you see these, like, fun, hilarious PSAs about stuff. And it's really good. Like, it just was this perfect combination of things that fall in the middle. This is probably one of the more interesting things that I've ever done.
Over most of the nations of the earth. And the shadow is encroaching upon our own liberty. The third major reason for accepting our citizenship responsibilities and working at them is the presence within America of socialist and communist propagandists dedicated to the establishment of a new order.
I mean,
The communist
from the beginning of this musical journey to now, I mean, it's definitely like you've gone through the catalog of a regular recording band. Like, you've gone through, like, the evolution of, like, you've basically Blink-182'd yourself, where you start off scrappy and young, and then you found the good, like, production quality and, like, experimented with sounds and soundscapes, and you're like, ooh, but what if we make a smart story?
Right.
But not that that's... I think you're... Not to ever compare you to Blink-182, because I'm sorry.
But this is super Rolling Stones-esque. When I listened to it, like, I was really into the Rolling Stones when I was listening to this.
It's such an interesting fusion of the things that you're interested in, and I always liked that in the way that you approach the show, is like, you were going to bring politics and art and music into every single topic that I would let you. Like, we would talk about the implications of Andy Warhol eating a hamburger one week, and then, like, your crazy GOP bracket the next week, which we've alluded to it. I'll link in the show notes to the amazing series of articles that Shaun wrote for the GOP primaries in 2016, where he made a March Madness style bracket of the candidates. Like, it was just so goofy and interesting, but very well thought out and well researched that, like, it was peak Shaun, you know?
Like, the difference between Shaun and I is that, like, I played video games, and the way that I wasted my time was killing, like, aliens or whatever the fuck, right? And instead, I'm like a person that plays games first and like an artist second, but Shaun is actually, like, feels like an artist first. Like, he's so much more concerned with, like, things that, like, artists should be, and so then he's, like, secondary, like, whatever these 10 million different things he's into.
That's super flattering. That's super flattering. I've had that conversation with other coworkers where they've been like, "Oh, you didn't play video games?" I said, "No." I'm like, I came home from
No, Shaun read books.
I came home from not even that. I came home from school every day and I sat down behind my drum set for 2 hours and I wanted to figure out how to play that drum beat. Or, like, I come home from work now and I sit behind my guitar and I practice scales and I learn songs that I really like, and I want to figure out how to do that and how to sound just like them. That's always been my hobby. Like, how do I do that? How do I make that exact sound?
I do also want to point out, though, that, like, in the midst of all of that, over the course of this podcast, you've become by far the most well-read member of this panel. I mean, you read more books than probably everyone else that's ever been on this show combined. I remember one time I read one book that I really liked, and I mailed it to you, and in response, you mailed me 5, and I've still only read one of them.
Is that was that the thing that came with Architecture of Happiness?
I read Architecture of Happiness, and then I haven't finished any of the other ones yet.
Oh, okay.
Including Why is Painting Like a Pizza? A Guide to Modern Art.
Which is fantastic. It's a fantastic book.
So the last piece of your work that we'll throw up here is the theme you did for 10 Minute Tech Talk, which kind of like Tyler's logo for 10 Minute Tech Talk. When I played it for Emily, we both just knew, like, this is it. This is the music for the show. Knowing that we're moving into a new project and how excited you are, I just wanted to hear a little bit about, like, how you came up with what became the 10 Minute Tech Talk music, and maybe, like, what your process is now that you're a serial podcast theme producer.
Okay, so this is, before I listen to this, because I can tell you exactly how I wrote this. I had just moved to DC. Taylor had came to me and said, hey, can you write something for this new podcast we're going to do? It's called 10 Minute Tech Talk. And he said that Emily was going to be involved in it. And I was like, okay, well, this is cool because I'm kind of in this real weird lull right now. I've just moved to the city. I spend most of my time by myself, and I want to do this. And knowing that Emily is English, I was like, how do I write something that's kind of like poppy and pop punky, but I also integrate this like awesome English element to it, this little Cockney thing. And this is what I came up with, and I really like this song. That's it was honestly, this is getting me pumped for everything else because I loved making this.
I see you got much shorter with this one.
Well, he knew this was going to be an intro, so he only wrote 46 seconds. And I used about 21 seconds of it, I think.
He doesn't even use the good parts. He doesn't use the nice fade in where... Do you use the fade in?
It's a 10-minute long podcast. I have to use as little as possible.
You still got 9 minutes and 15 seconds. I don't know how much more you need of your stupid podcast.
We play it at the beginning and the end.
But yeah, no, I try to use my whole trip hop, like, 11:30 feel with a nice, like, phone lines, echoey introduction, and I like to make these. It's like, I feel like this, I kind of understand a tiny little itty bitty bit what it's like when someone goes to Hans Zimmer and they're like, make a score for this movie. And he's like, what's it about? And they're like, it's about alternate dimensions and dreams. And then he comes back like 2 months later and he has this like amazing score that seems to just be like effortless. I get it.
I like that was where you specifically went because it's very actually Shaun. When you said that, when I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's one of like the 3 movies that we know Shaun has seen more than once. Inception, The Prestige, and Pulp Fiction.
What are your thoughts on Jurassic Park?
The new one? Jurassic World 2?
No, the original.
Oh, fantastic. The score is still stuck in my head all the time. How did that one go? No, I'm just messing around. I know how it went.
So I asked this question of Tyler last week, and I'll ask it of you again this week. 3 years ago, when we started this podcast, you were finishing up a master's degree. You were living in Athens. You weren't really making a lot of music, and I feel like you kind of really just did this as a favor to me, and because Tyler was involved. And now here we are, and 147 episodes later. What's changed for you creatively, personally? I mean, you've moved twice. You moved to Akron and then to DC. But, like, besides all of that, like, surface level stuff, what do you feel like has changed for you?
Well, now I miss this podcast. At first it was work.
You can't miss it yet. It's not over.
Well, no, I mean, so we just got off of a hiatus. of doing this while everybody was traveling and getting their acts together across different states. But I missed it. I really wanted to do it, and I missed talking to you guys about stuff, which is why I'm excited about the new one, because I know that while this journey is ending, I should say, while this road is ending, the journey still continues. And that's very exciting for me. Creatively speaking, right now, I am much more into music, and I think that reflects other things that are going on in my life right now, positive aspects of my life. And whole assing it. That's kind of been the motto of 2018 for me, is like just whole ass it. Like if you're going to be good at something, be really good at it. So I kind of cut away the fat, and I'm really enjoying it. It's been really good for me to kind of home in on some activities that I really, really love. This is one of them. So that's why I miss it, because I really care about this. I care about you guys. It hurts to think about this particular project leaving, but I'm so excited for the new one, because it's like the culmination of everything that we've done right in this one, that I cannot wait. And I really hope that we can continue to capture that same energy and excitement that we have in this show, but under a new banner.
Took it to a really sentimental place.
Well,
Last week, Tyler was just like, I'm glad I'm not working at fucking Chipotle anymore.
Oh no, I'm glad I have a better job. I'm glad that I've grown as a person. You know, like.
I mean, let's just ignore. I mean, I feel like Shaun, more specifically, really doesn't like to talk about his. It's not his personal life, but it's his
offline life.
His offline life. There's so many parts of this podcast we've cut because of things that Shaun has specifically said not to include.
And it's like dumb shit. I feel like don't tell him I have a new car. Don't tell him I got a new guitar. Like, don't tell him that. Blah, 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 blah.
I think it's just that you don't want the listeners to know that you spent money.
Yeah, I need them to...
As if they're going to think that we're rolling in the dough from this show.
I need to perpetually maintain this appearance. Well, I don't know. Is appearance the right word? This sound that I'm...
Right.
Broke.
No one knows what you look like, Shaun.
Both.
Yeah, they have to assume that you're broke.
And
otherwise the whole show falls apart.
Right, that's what I mean. If they don't assume that I'm both like spiritually, emotionally, and relationship broke, then nothing works. I just heard Sarah laugh on the other side of the just
art is about the struggle, right?
Right. Art of the struggle. Art of the struggle. Oh. Art of the struggle. I'm gonna say it 10 more times. Art of the struggle.
All right, everybody, now it's time to round out this episode with another round of Shameless Plugs. And we will start, as we always do, with Tyler Reed. Tyler, if people want to find you and your work, where can they do that?
Hey, everybody. You can find my design and illustration work at tylerreed.com. And you can find me on Instagram as TRZine and Twitter as Sneezy Panda.
Shaun, if people want to get in touch with you about commissioning theme songs for their new podcasts, where can they do that?
They can hit me up at Twitter at Real Cash Otter. And can I just do like a little shameless plug, old school shameless plug? Today,
yeah, of course.
Emily Bamforth, you were so close to having an unlocked refrigerator of Bud Lights. You were so close. And I just, oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that your field goal got blocked. I honestly think that Cleveland would have burned down for probably a 9th time if that would have happened. But there's always next week. And you guys made a great showing this week. So, Browns Super Bowl 2062 on the road again. Go Sport Ball.
Go Sports.
40 years later, they might open the fridge one time.
Well, I've been your host, Taylor. You can find me on the socials as at TC Olmstead. If you like what we do here, you can like and follow us at Dudes Brunch for news about our last 3-4 episodes and for news about the new show, the as yet untitled new show. And other than that, we'll be back next week with another episode of Dudes Brunch.
He's got a knife.
That's not a knife.
Yeah, with a knife.
Yeah, with a knife.
Yeah, sharp knife.